Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about classroom management. My name is Lisa. I'm from South Africa. I live in a small town called Robertson, and I've been teaching for many years, both in person and online. And today we are talking about the troubles one may have in a classroom and ways of looking at them and ways of being prepared and solving those problems. So you're welcome to introduce yourself, say where you are from, and we will kick off with our slides. And after about half an hour of going through some slides and some points, then we have another half an hour where we have a Q&A session, and I will do my best to answer all the questions you have. All right. Great. So I already see we have someone from Soweto. Hi. Also South African. Welcome. Hi. And someone else that says echo. Hello, hello. I presume I have an echo. I hope it goes away. All right. And we have C from Canada and from Serbia. So we already have 3 different continents. England, Cardiff, some is a West, another South African, Wales, England, Canada, Serbia, Joburg, Josie, welcome everyone. Hi. All right. So whether you already teach or whether it is your future career, that is what we're talking about today, and Argentina. So we have just added on another continent. Hi. I love it. I love it when we have almost everyone, almost the whole world here. Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, and let us go straight in. All right, for many people, especially teachers who are new to the classroom, thinking about how they're going to deal with behavior issues can seem very daunting. Often people think that it's going to be teenage classes that are the biggest problem when it comes to classroom management issues. However, that is not necessarily the truth. Any class can be a problem, and classes of teenagers can be great fun. So it's not always teenagers that are the troubles. The key is careful planning and thought about what you want to achieve, okay, which is what we're going to look at. I'm not going to get distracted, but hi from India as well. Welcome. I love it. Lots of people today, which is great. So we're going to have a great conversation. I do believe that. Okay. Before you teach, first you need to think about the class you are going to teach. Not only the class, but the individuals in that class. So try and understand why they're there and what motivations they have. So different ages bring different considerations. If you teach very young learners, typically around 4 to 5 years old, it is likely that they're not going to know the language, usually, not necessarily, and will have a very limited experience of being in the classroom. That you will know if they're only 4 or 5. They might not even be able to read, which is definitely a challenge. Here it is important to keep activities very short, just a couple of minutes for each activity, and activities that involve lots of repetition. So that's if you have young learners who are beginners. Materials should be visual, as well as videos and songs, and it is likely that there won't be any reading or writing at that stage, because perhaps they do not yet know how to read, which is very possible if they are very young learners. All right. So young learners, then we have, so that's very young learners. So that's preschool, basically. That is a challenge. It is a challenge. Okay, young learners, primary school or junior school, depending on where you're from. So typically around 6 to 11 years old. So, that's grade 1 to grade 7-ish. They typically do have experience of being in a class, and some will have English skills. They could be advanced. You never know. Some of the most advanced English speakers I have taught have been very young, so they may be quite advanced. By the time they are 11, they could have very high levels of English. And activities still need to be quite short and engaging for young students. It's important that the materials you use are age appropriate. So also that the material will be that the kids will understand what you're talking about. What interests a 6-year-old is unlikely to have the same interest for an 11-year-old. So if you have a big class with a big age group, that might be a challenge. Okay, so that's something to think of. Then we have teenagers, age 13 to 16, or even 17, 18, so high school, basically, and even young college or university students. So teenager classes are typically between 12 and 16 years old. As with young learners, there can be a wide variety in ability. So you might get advanced teens and teens who are just starting out learning English. So teenagers also are able to focus on tasks for a little bit longer, so they don't need to be as short, all the tasks. And where are we in my notes here? Lessons still need to be engaging and varied. Teenagers tend to be more self-conscious. So yeah, younger students, if you get them to in a speaking lesson, they're more likely to just jump in, whereas teenagers might be a bit wary, maybe a bit shy. So that's a different thing to look at. And then adults. So from 16 or over 18, it depends. Depends if they are, how old in heart and spirit they are. But anyone over the age of 16 or 18, depending on the school. Because as I say, you might get high school students who are still up to 19, 20, who are still in a school environment or or college environment. So they're not just adults. Adults, of course, can be false beginners. So you might have students who are adults and they're just starting out as well. Or advanced students and maybe learning English for a wide variety of reasons. So personal reasons, study, or work, to name a few. Adults tend to need to see things written down and need to be more confident that they are correct before they are willing to speak or say something or answer a question in class. Okay, so those are the groups that we are going to look at today. So it's a very varied group. All right. Decide on classroom rules before you go into class. So think about what you want to happen in your classroom. What behavior will you accept and what behavior you won't accept? Decide on your rules and stick to them. So don't just think about the rules, think about the activities and tasks that you're going to do and that you'll give your learners that will engage them and keep them working rather than messing around. So you need to decide all of this before you go into your lesson. All right. I say this with such confidence as I read through notes and slides. Of course, anyone who has already taught a big class, you know that children could just not listen to a word you say. Anyway, we will discuss that. All right. So, during the lesson, a classroom contract. This is a good thing. It really is something you should do. You can put the students into a group and get them to decide what they think classroom rules should be. This is a good way because if the students come up with their own rules and their own contract, they are more likely to stick with it. It's a good idea. I have children who almost kill each other to write their names on a board. So if I now say everyone writes their own name on the board, we at least solve one problem. So that's the kind of thing, even if it's a tiny thing, if you come up with a rule together and stick to it, you might save yourself one piece of trouble. All right. Okay. Students, if you have this contract, you can write it up on the board. You can get the students to copy it down. They can even make a nice poster. Oh, that's actually a great idea. If you have your class rules and have a big poster, so you can always just, what did we say about speaking to each other in class? And you can gesture to the poster. So that's a great idea. Okay, rules for the teacher, rules for the students. So some kids will stick to them, some adults will stick to them, others, they might be more of a challenge. All right. So here is an example of a classroom contract. So the rules are clear. It's important to use simple language with clear do's and don'ts rather than more confusing language. So this is an example of a classroom contract. Okay. I would even screenshot this because it can be very useful. So we all agree to respect each other, listen when the teacher or another student speaks, raise our hand to speak, not bully or laugh at anyone. It's a great rule. Turn off your mobile phones or put them on silent. Come on time. Bring everything you need to every lesson. So bring your pen, bring your book, and do your homework on time. While we are looking at these rules, these are written, not specifically, but these are written for a class, a one-to-one class, where you go into a classroom and you have a whole group of people in a classroom in reality, one-to-one class. These, of course, will also work if you are teaching online. So if you have a whole group online, then you also need to do this. So obviously, like raise our hand to speak. If you're online, there's the raise hand tool, all of those online things that you can use, chat, that kind of thing. Respect each other online. If you have just individual students, one-to-one, this is also a good idea. So even if it's just you teaching one student at a time, rules your classroom, even though you are then perhaps across the world from each other, you still are in a virtual classroom. So these rules can be for a real lesson with real people. I read an assignment the other day that said virtual students. It's not virtual students, they're real students in a virtual classroom. So for your real students in virtual classrooms, you can have rules for virtual classrooms as well. But they are still real students. They aren't, although I actually saw another person who said they were teaching AI. So those would be virtual students. But not what we're talking about today. So those are classroom rules. All right. During the lesson, be consistent. Your students, especially teenagers, will understand very clearly if they think you are being fair and if they think you're not. They will tell you if they don't think you're being fair. And this can lead to a bigger conflict in class. Again, I really do have an example for everything. I have two groups, and I was busy with one child and said, I need 2 more minutes. And the older class got so cross. They said, we're here. I said, it was only 28 minutes past. So I still had 2 minutes. Because kids can really, if they are in a mood, they will get at you. So be consistent, stick to the rules, and don't add more. So don't suddenly add extra rules. You have written rules of the class and agreed on them in the first lesson, so don't change them or add to them. This is part of being consistent. Use positive reinforcement. If a student is constantly being told off or being punished, there can seem very little point in trying hard. So rather when you give feedback, to give positive feedback instead of just moaning the whole time. Rather keep it positive. Look at when they've done well, praise them for it. Don't lecture the class about behavior. If you need to deal with a discipline issue, deal with it quickly and move on, and don't harp on it, because then you lose time. You just waste time. Your students, especially teenagers, want to have boundaries, and I think teenagers, but also even tiny ones. They want to know where they are. Be clear with your rules and boundaries and stick to them. If you tell a student to do something and they refuse and you back down, the boundaries become blurred and they will know they can get away with things. Have clear ways to start and end the class. This is a great idea. This could be doing the register at the start, checking homework, or a warm-up is always a fun thing. Or you always do something at the beginning of the class, or you always do something at the end of a class. That kind of thing is always a great way to sort of wrap it up and keep, I don't know, it works. Okay, great. So keep all of this in mind, that you know how to begin and you know how to end. All right, during the lesson. Okay, so think carefully about what you are saying to your students. There's no point in making empty threats that you can't carry out. For example, don't tell a student you will get them removed from the school if you actually can't do that. If you don't have the power to have a student removed from the lesson, then don't say that. So if you don't have the authority, don't talk about that. Only say what is true. Don't humiliate students, definitely. Focus on the behavior rather than the student. So if the student's being bad, don't say you are bad, say your behavior is not acceptable. So always make that, I can't think of the word now. The distinction that it's not the person that you are talking about, it is their behavior. If they're being really terribly behaved, speak to them privately about any concerns you have, and even if you have to take your concerns to the head of the school or head of the grade or whatever, so that you don't have it all in the class. Be aware of your own feelings. We can't all be cheerful all the time, but it is not our students' fault if something that happened to you outside the classroom. It's important to remain professional and objective. If you have a student that you seem to constantly having to speak to about their behavior, stop and think for a moment. Are they behaving worse than other people in the class? Sometimes maybe there is a personality clash that does happen. Are you too focused on their behavior? One student might be so overwhelming that you can't even get to everyone. And if you make a mistake, don't be embarrassed or try to cover it up. Admit to it. Just say sorry. Admit your mistakes. Apologize if needed. It will help create a calmer environment. So if you said something that was wrong, or if you forgot your grammar, or if you marked something and said something incorrectly, just apologize. Move on. So admit mistakes. Always say the truth will set you free. Okay. So that was during the lesson. So we had before the lesson, we set up the rules. During the lesson, keep calm and carry on to the most extent. And then after the lesson, time for reflection. So when the lesson is finished, it's important to think about how the lesson went. You might want to keep notes of your thoughts and refer to them later. I imagine I always keep notes. So you have your notes, your lesson plans, and then afterwards, like you always have notes like where did you get to in the book? Or which words did they know? Which words were problematic? So keep notes. Any notes, you can always refer back to them. Start by thinking about what went well in the lesson. If there were tasks where all the students were fully engaged, why was that? What was it about the task that went well? If your students did everything you asked, why was that? So like really go into it. That worked brilliantly, and maybe that other thing didn't work at all. They didn't understand it, or they didn't like the theme. So if something didn't go as planned, also make notes of that. Was the task not age appropriate for the class? Was there something that was outside of your control? The weather, noise from another classroom, or maybe you have an online classroom and you have bad connection. That also often happens. So the student can't hear you properly, or you can't hear your student properly. So maybe maybe it's like a broken telephone. That kind of thing can happen with online classes. And what issues you had? Was it unusual for that particular student to have that issue? Was it unusual for the class to have an issue? Like usually they're fine, and then today they weren't listening at all. What happened? Was it a bad class? Did something happen at their school? You always think, if someone has a reaction that you don't expect or that's upsetting or whatever, think about where they're coming from. Where's that student coming from? Where are you coming from that day? Maybe you have had a nasty day. You're like, oh, maybe you're tired. Maybe your student's tired. Maybe the weather was terrible and there's storms, or all sorts of things can happen all around the world all the time that have nothing necessarily to do with you or your class, but all of those things affect you and affect people. And if one student is in a bad mood, it might affect other students, that kind of thing. So keep it all in mind. All right. Could you have done anything differently? What worked, what didn't work? Always good to reflect on how everything went after each lesson. Even if it's just a few notes in a book, and underline one student's name, like, why? What's going on? All right. And this is more. What would you do differently? What would you change? or what was great, and you're going to do that again. Like, that worked brilliantly. I'm going to do that every lesson. So keep these notes because they are going to help you. Even if you have it with that class and then you have a different class, then those notes might help you with a different class because similar things might happen. And you can obviously write. I still write in books with pens. But if you want to write books with pens, that's fine. Or if you want to just make notes online. And also if you're giving feedback to students, because online students, if you work for a school, you often have to give feedback, written feedback for all your students. And if you are in a school, in a real school, you probably have to do that too. So sometimes there are official notes that you are making and sometimes just for yourself. Anyway, so they need to be made either way. All right. So, we got another one. While you are thinking about, you reflecting, you're having difficulties, rather than simply blaming a bad class on bad students, which is not always easy, start by thinking about your actions. So think about everything. Maybe there's a bad student, a rotten apple in your class. Maybe you are having a bad day. Remember that you are an adult and you have to demonstrate your adult behavior in a class. And sometimes you expect that from your students, but they're not necessarily adults. So think about the activities and tasks for the lesson. What will you do differently? Think about your behavior. We always try to behave, but think your own behavior. We always say don't shout at students, which I'll continue to say don't shout at students. But when they are screaming and perhaps you can't get, sometimes one does raise one's voice and then you think, I should not have done that. So all this kind of thing you can think about. And don't shout. Don't shout. There's never an excuse. I have a group of students and I don't shout. They do. And sometimes the teacher from next door will come in and shout at those students because they are so badly behaved. So, but still, you just will get a sore throat. So don't shout at your students. All right. We still have this one. There are a few extra notes here. Okay. So the most important thing to remember in a class and classroom management is to not be afraid to talk about any issues you have. You could speak to your other teachers. You can speak to your class, even if they're little kids. You could say, all right, that class did not go well. You could even small bit, what happened? Why are you so upset? Why are you cross? Let's work on this. So always talk about it. Talk about it with your class. Talk about it if you work for a school. Talk about it with the head of the school, maybe the principal, other teachers. You might feel that you are the only person to have these problems, but usually everyone else is having them too. And if you are in a school with other teachers and you talk, you might even have trouble with this, in the same class. So always speak to people, and they might be able to offer you solutions. You might be able to give the other teachers advice. Other teachers might be able to give you advice or share advice. This is exactly what we do when we have these webinars. Is all of us have taught. Well, if we haven't taught, we will be teaching. So if you have taught, then you've done certain things, you've faced certain issues, certain things worked. So we're going to share now in our Q&A session. I went through that quite quickly. I hope I didn't speak too quickly. There were a lot of quite wordy things, but we will go through things again. If there was anything you missed, we can go through it again. And we now can go straight into our Q&A. I see we have even more people here let's go through everyone we have from Toronto, from Somerset West, England, Cardiff, Perth in Canada, Soweto, Argentina, India, more from India and Nigeria. So welcome everyone, and welcome again. And now, if you have any questions about what we have gone through or any questions about classroom management in general, you are welcome to type all your questions in the chat, and I will answer them as best as I can. And other people also, if they have answers for those questions, can add them in as well. All right, very nice. Here we have our first question. Hi, Ellen. Okay. Who do I ask for help if I'm teaching online? So it will depend. So if you are teaching, I think they sort of, I'm going to just say they're probably like three main online teaching kind of scenarios. One is you are a private teacher and you have your own students and you just teach them. You found them, you teach them. Then I would then, for sort of general advice, I would join groups like a TTA kind of group, or maybe Facebook kind of groups with online teachers, and chat and get advice. So that's if you are a private teacher and those are your own students. Very often you teach for a school. So maybe you teach for native camps to mind, or the English, I can't think of any names, but so those other where you teach for a school, a whole school, or AIMS English in Vietnam, native camp I think is Japan. So if you teach at a school online, then there will be people who are in charge that you can go to, that you can contact and say, these children are wild, or this student is not listening, or whatever. So that's the person I would go to then. And then if you teach through something like Preply, then you can go to Preply online, and they also are people who are in charge. So the head of the Preply people would also be able to help you. So those are my three. So if you are a private teacher, I would just ask, get into groups of, there are a lot of teaching groups like on Facebook, for instance, and you could put questions out there and get some advice. And if you're teaching for a school, then there are people who you would be able to ask. All right, great question. Thank you. All right. Oh, yes. Yes, Rosemary, I have been there. When teaching online, some students do not use their cameras. Any tips on encouraging camera use? It is very annoying as well, because then sometimes they don't have the camera on, but you can hear that they still have the microphone, and you can hear that, and you think that student is playing games, and you can't see them, but you are 98% sure that they are playing games. I'm thinking, I can remember him. I remember his name. Oh, I would set up a rule, just like we said, classroom rules, and say, we always put our cameras on when we have a lesson, and try. Often they say, my camera's not working, and unfortunately you have you don't have proof that they are not telling the truth. If you are working for a school and some of the students are doing that, you can mention it to one of the, I can't think of what the names are of the management of the school, and say that the student refuses to turn his or her or their camera on, and just, it is very annoying. And often it's a teen, and you just maybe just explain. So we are not going to be able to have an effective enough class if you do not turn the camera on, because then I can't see if you are doing your work. Oh, I know. Just try your best. Maybe say we'll finish the class 2 minutes earlier or something. I don't know. But it is very hard. It is very hard. And it's often a teenager who just refuses. Or sometimes they do turn the camera on, but then they put a strange filter on. I had one student, and every time I taught her, she was a fried egg on Google Meet. It was better than nothing at all, though. I prefer to teach a fried egg than nothing. it's so hard, Rosemary. I remember. Just ask nicely and just try. And as I say, if you are teaching for a school, then say this student refuses. Please help. Okay, but great question, and I'm sure that many people online will have 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 the same problem. Have had the same problem. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Oh no. If you sense a class collectively turning against you, what should you do? Oh my goodness. I can remember when I was a teenager, we had one or two teachers who would get bullied by our students. It's a sad thing. That is a sad thing. I also remember at high school in particular, there's always one poor teacher who's just bullied. It's terrible. Oh, I personally try and be fun. I try and be fun that I'm the nice teacher and that I don't think I'm particularly strict. I don't think I'm strict enough. I do think I get walked over on occasion. But generally, just try and be fun. Try and relate to a couple of the students if it's a whole class. And if you really are feeling that there's a whole class turning against you, then see what you can do. See, because there might be a ringleader. There might be just one student that's at the head of that. And if you are at a school, I would speak to management and see what you can do, because it's unfortunate. It's often one child or one student that doesn't like you and then gets everyone else sort of involved in a negative, unpleasant, upsetting way. But I can imagine that happening. That's terrible. I hope it hasn't happened to you, Darren. I hope that you just remember it as a student yourself. But I really can imagine that happening. So if it happens in a real scenario, then just speak to management and say, I'm just not gelling with this class. Because sometimes also there are like 3 people in the class and sometimes you don't like people as much as other people. And it does happen. But yeah, no, I hope it doesn't happen often. Thank you. All right. I see some more greetings here. So some more South Africans, yes. And more Nigerians, so more Africans in the house. Thank you. All right, great. Another great question here. Thank you. All right, how do you cope with students who never get their work done? That's also... Yeah, I mean, in a way, often teaching English is an extramural. You're not the main teacher at the main school. You are the teacher at the English school, or you're the online teacher, so that it is I would imagine for most of us teaching English, it's an extramural. So either you're an adult and you do this on the side, even if you do it every day, it's still not your main study. And I think sometimes people don't do their work for an extramural. Your extra class. Yeah, just say you still haven't done your homework. We will, try do it. You need to do it for next time, or maybe if it's a one-to-one, if you're just teaching that student, maybe then you work through it in class and say, next time we will have more time to do fun activities if you get your work done before. Now we're having to go through your homework tasks because you didn't do them before. If it is in a classroom scenario, sure, that's awkward. If everyone has done their homework, because you can't really put them in the corner, we're not really there anymore. Yeah, so if it's in a classroom scenario, you just maybe say, I'll speak to you after the lesson and then carry on, keep calm and carry on. If you are teaching that student privately, then work through it and say we're wasting time, unfortunately, because you didn't do your work before. What will your parents think of this? I don't know. There's an empty threat. I would maybe just, instead of punishing, say everyone who's done their homework gets a sweet at the end of the lesson, or a sweet at the end of the month, or at the end of the term. So maybe, there's a carrot and a stick always. So maybe if you get your homework done next week, maybe a reward instead of a punishment. Maybe, I don't know, that could work. So a reward could work. Okay. But this is all what we learn step by step, as you start your classes. Because I see now. But thank you, great question. Some students, and if there's a whole crew of students who don't get their work done, then maybe, all those sweets that I was going to bring at the end of the week, unfortunately, all of those who haven't done their work will not be getting sweets at the end of the week. I don't know. Maybe you offer a reward and they'd say you're not going to get it. I have no idea. Not have no idea. But you have to, as with all things when it comes to behavior and classroom management, it's, some things work well. Some things work well one day, and then not necessarily the next day, or maybe not the next week. So you just have to change things. I think always changing things, coming in with a new idea. Say, all right, as from next week, all those who have finished their homework will do something. So if you bring in something new, that is always a way to sort of get the attention back. So those ones that are like, not doing their homework, you can re-enthuse. Okay. The students. Okay. Another question from Darren. Thank you. Thank you very much. The key player. So you have Darren hasn't started yet. So you're not singled out and being bullied. I'm pleased to hear that. All right. Don't be bullied. Be brave, and you won't be. Okay, thank you. How do I deal with students? I've taught lots of different things over the years in different scenarios. So I have taught English online and in person, but I've taught all sorts of other things as well, and done edutainment. So I've done theatre in education. So that's why I say it's something that sort of grabs students' attention and distracts them from their bad behavior. So that's from the entertainment side of my past, is if you come up with something that catches everyone's attention that they weren't expecting, and then you have all of their attention, that is a good way to start. So I come from a performance background, that kind of energy that you grab your students' attention, that I find very helpful, because I don't want to say it's unnerving, but sometimes they're not expecting it. So if you come with a slightly different energy, or come from a different angle into your lesson, then you've got fresh energy, and then you sort of get your students' attention again. So that's how I've done it. I always sort of surprise them. I'm big for distraction and surprise, so that you just get everyone's attention again, and then you sort of can start again. So if there was a bit of negativity and and then you come, a new idea, a new activity, that's how I generally deal with students. If I'm losing them, or if not getting on with them in that moment, is to change the energy and change the activity. And even with little kids, simple things like everyone stand up, take a deep breath, everyone pat yourself on the back, that kind of thing. Or you change, so everyone's been sitting and writing and now they're all chatting, and you go, all right, we're going to do a mingle activity, or we're going to do a different activity, or swap seats. So a bit of distraction and a bit of changing energy, I think, is always good. And I have used that in different things over the years with different kinds of people, and it works. Thank you. Here is another great question. Thanks, Darren. I think actually I'm supposed to have it like this. But then, okay. A student who isn't keeping up with the rest of the class. This is also this is an excellent question. Excellent question. So you can't bring everyone down back to the beginning. I would very gently add a bit of extra, maybe a little extra fun work quietly for that student who's not keeping up. And kind of thing like drills, like if you do things all together. So if everyone says things together, then that student can do things saying, yeah, if you drill grammar rules or whatever, like times tables of the olden days, then that student can do it along with everyone else. So drills will help. And if you switch partners in a class, so that student sometimes is with a more advanced student who can help, or maybe that student is with someone who is like the second one who's not keeping up with the rest of the class, that you can maybe spend a little bit more time with that student, so that maybe the more advanced students can go off on their own, and the slightly less advanced students, you can spend a bit more time with them. So you either, in terms of switching and swapping groups or pairs in a class, you can either pair lower with higher to sort of balance out, or higher and they can get on with an extra task while you focus on those who are struggling together. Okay. I think that is good advice. All right. Okay, thanks again, Darren. All right, another. Run into problems as a woman teacher dealing with male adult learners. Bullying. Now, I haven't personally. I've taught more kids than adults in my life, and I've done more sort of workshopy kind of things with adults, more than strict teaching with adults in a group. I have taught some adults online as well, but not in a group. I'm now thinking, you do get that male adult learners. I can imagine it can be an issue. I really do think that it can be. And I'm thinking how awkward and awful that would be. And I'm feeling very grateful that I haven't dealt with that. Again, if you come at a different angle, that you sort of surprise an adult learner, that they're not expecting you to behave in a certain way, that you have all the confidence in the world, you get it, you keep all the confidence in the world, and just make sure that you know exactly what you're doing, so that they can't get the better of you. I keep your confidence, keep your strength, and as much as you can. And if it's really unpleasant, then again, I don't want to say tell on, but report it. If you are being bullied by an adult male in a lesson, then don't keep quiet about it. Go and report it and say there is someone who has unacceptable behavior, and I am not going to stand for this. So that is what I would do. Stand up for yourself and make sure that it is dealt with in a take it right to the top of that school. Take it right and make sure it gets dealt with, because there's no excuse for that. There is no excuse for a woman being bullied by a man, or any person being bullied by anyone. There is no excuse for that. So, take it right to the top and get someone to help you deal with it. All right. Great question. And I hope that no one is having to deal with that now, because that is not cool. Thank you for that question. All right. Completely different question. Learners who get frightened and cry in class. Just be as lovely as you can to them. Presume they're young. Have lovely, positive, exciting, fun activities to do that you can try as best you can to sort of distract the children. Say, find the nicest other child in the class and pair them up. So pick the most generous, sweetest child in the class and make sure that they sit with that one. I'm just thinking, who has been watching this, changing the subject? But that little monkey online that has a toy monkey, that little monkey in Japan with a toy monkey, that question made me think of that little. Anyway, so I do get distracted. So if there is a frightened child, pair them up with someone who's lovely in your class that can look after them. That's what I was thinking of, that monkey that's finally got someone to look after them. Have lovely, kind activities to do that are fun and distracting. So, if everyone is watching a fun video or singing a fun song or learning something fun and looking at, new pictures of toys, then it's a bit distracting, and hopefully that child will get distracted enough to enjoy themselves. And I've had a few very small students in the past online who are 3 years old, and they were just too little to have a class, and just weeping because they didn't know what was going on. Why is this strange woman from another country talking to me? Luckily, the parents just took those kids away and said, "No, don't worry." It's only happened like once or twice, and those children were like 3 or 2. But I really distract with something fun and happy. A song. Songs are great for beginners and kids, little young kids. So that might be fun. Or a fun video, pictures of cats, pictures of happy monkeys, that kind of thing. Just happy things. And also try and pair that child with a nice person, with that motherly child in the class, the one that looks after everyone. There's always that delightful child that looks after everyone else, that knows what's going on and looks after the rest. Try and gravitate to that class and that child and pair them up. Great question. Thank you. All right. Punch. That's what that little monkey is called. If you've seen it online. I don't even get that distracted by things online, but that little thing has been everywhere. Okay. So, great questions so long. Thank you. That has been here. A lot of the time, one does not face such terrible things. A lot of the time, you just go to your class, have your lesson, teach it. Everyone learns. They go off, they do their homework. So don't be scared. Obviously, these things happen. Bullying, obviously, unfortunately, it does happen. And obviously, there are issues that come up. But don't be scared. For those of you who haven't started teaching it, it's not like this is all the time. What is all the time is teenagers not go turning their cameras on. That you might face frequently. But a lot of these other problems, although obviously they do exist and they are all real, these issues, it's not like you're going to be facing all of these things every day. Most of the time, you will go to school, teach your kids, teach your group of adults. They will learn, you'll have lunch, all will be well. Or you teach online, you see your same students every week, they learn, and it's all good. It's all good, even if you can hear and they're playing games. Even those sometimes do learn as well. So don't be scared. Obviously there are issues, but you probably won't have all the issues all the time. All right, since I'm waiting we still have 10 minutes for questions. In the meantime, I will say that we, a group of us from TTA do webinars every week. And the webinars deal with the assignments you do. So there are webinars for all of the assignments, L3A, L3B, L5A, B, C. Very helpful. And all sorts of other things like beginners, business English, teaching online, teaching overseas, IPA, all sorts of things. And all of these webinars, like today, like now, are available online on the TTA YouTube page. So TTA has their own YouTube page. And if you go to that YouTube page and go to videos, click on the videos tab, then you can search for what you're looking for. So if you're looking for L5B, you can look for L5B, and then you can see, and then there are various versions of them because it's done every few months. So then I've done some and others have done. So all of those webinars are available online. Okay. I was going to say. Great. Here's another great question. Most rewarding moment teaching. There are so many. So many. When a student gets it, when they just understand it, or when they're just joyful and love learning. Yeah, there was one tiny little girl who I was teaching, the sweetest young learner I've ever had, who just loved it. She was so thrilled every week to have her lesson. She was about 4 years old and so sweet. And snowman, just go, no man. That's the most delightful child. That was lovely. Then adults who, you have adults and teens that have TEFL, that you have IELTS classes with, and you chat to them for ages, and then they do well in their IELTS exams. Those are great. And then students that you keep in contact with, and that you then get emails from like years later, and they let you know that they're doing well, and that all those conversations you had with them actually helped. So there are so many. There's so many. It really is. It is rewarding. And you go and say, get in a circle, and then all the students fight to stand next to you. That kind of thing. It's all lovely. It's all lovely. And that loads other people can also share. That's such a lovely question. Thanks, Darren. So if anyone else wants to add in what their rewarding moments teaching were, they can add them in the chat as well, because I would be happy to hear them. Thank you. Here we have another great question. Esther, thank you. How to deal with shy kids. I think in some ways, similar to some kids that might, be struggling a bit, is sort of, you can do either. So you can get the confident one and the shy one and pair them up so that you sort of balance it out. Or maybe put the shy kids together, and then they can be shy together, and then the loud extroverts can be noisy together. So I think that you can either balance it out or have the shy ones together, and you could do sort of quieter exercises with the shyer ones, and louder exercises with the more extrovert kids or adults. So a balance. and just swap it up. So you have pair work and then maybe group work. And if you have a shy student that you teach online, one-to-one, patience, patience. Yeah, every week you see them and try and get them to come out. Yeah, on occasion, you sort of, I think here's a piece of advice. Find out what that, if for instance, you have a student that you're teaching online and they are very shy, even though you've known them for years. Again, I speak from experience. Find out what that student likes. So if that student loves Harry Potter or loves Roblox or a game or a, I don't know, skippity toilet, again, I speak from experience, then see what they like and see if you can, if you are teaching online that specific student, so that you can sort of relate to them in a way. So that's if you have one-on-one online. So something that you can relate to that student. They might draw them out a little. And if it's in a class, just swap the groupings up so that the shy kid gets a chance to be with other shy and with the. But if you teach them every week, then every week you can swap them again, every class 3 times. So you do swap them around in a class, groups. Great question. Thank you. I don't see any other rewarding moments teaching being shared. But anyway, there are another student, super bright and super advanced. He was only 6 years old and had not even started school, but he could read and he was almost bilingual at 6. And every lesson I ever had, he would give me maths problems to do. And quick, if I was not quick enough, he'd be like, teacher, teacher. That was also fun. Every time I do these webinars, I remember all these students of days gone by. I don't teach all of them all the time anymore and classes in the past. All right. So we are almost at the end of this webinar. I hope there have been some useful answers to your questions. And I hope you all enjoying your course and your assignments and looking forward to teaching in the future. And don't get too nervous about all of this. As I say, most of the time you don't have all these problems all the time. They do crop up, but it's not. If you set up your rules, if you keep your own confidence and keep your own sanity, then you'll be fine. You'll be fine and enjoy it. It is a joyful thing. It's a joyful thing to impart knowledge, and it's a joyful thing to learn, and it's a joyful thing to be around people who are learning. So enjoy it. Thank you. And now we will go to our next slide. And I can be small again, like this one. Okay. And so thank you for attending, and that we have this thing, QR code, that asks, can you please tell us what you thought of this webinar? So you can, with a phone, read the QR code if it works, or just go to this link, the Survey Monkey. I always say it's not a real monkey. But to go there and say what was useful, what you would like to see webinars about in the future. And, thank you. Thank you. I see some of it, you thought it was helpful, so I'm very pleased. I always do my best. And if you do your best in your lessons, you will be fine as a teacher as well. And enjoy it. I do think if you bring joy and enthusiasm into all your lessons, then you will, to a large extent, get that back from your students. So thank you. Thank you for all your great questions. Thank you for sharing your time. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And thanks so much. Bye.